Welcome to Spanglish Friends, the podcast for true beginner Spanish learners.
Hola amigos, I'm Val, your co-host and experienced Spanish teacher from Venezuela.
And I'm Em, your Australian co-host who's been learning Spanish for 10 years.
Our goal is simple, to get you confident listening and speaking in beginner Spanish with content you'll actually use in real-life conversations.
Join the Spanish Friends community by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts and following us on social media at Spanglish_friends. Let's get started.
Comencemos.
Hola, hola amigos, ¿cómo están? How are you all?
Hola, Spanglish friends, and welcome to episode 13, episodio 13 of the podcast. Today we are going to be finding out how to express emotions in Spanish.
That's right. And today we're going beyond the surface level reply of I'm good, estoy bien, to tell people how we are starting a conversation. For example, we're going to learn how to say things like, I'm great, I'm fantastic, and much more.
Super handy. And throughout this episode, we are going to be practicing using the verb estar, which we learned means to be. If you are keen to hear more about estar and an overview of this verb, check out our previous episode, episode 12, where we introduced this and the common uses of estar versus ser that you need to know as a beginner.
Love this. And to kick off today, we're doing our Spanglish friend shout out of the week. And this week's shout out goes to Duska, who commented on our very first episode.
Yes, they said that they studied Spanish in high school several decades ago and that they will visit Spain for the first time this year and hopes to make many trips, improving their Spanish along the way. And also shared on episode 3 that they are loving our episodes.
Thanks so much, Duska, and we hope our podcast has been helping you with your prep to head to Spain. We can't wait to hear about your trip, so let us know in the comments.
Amazing. So, tell us, what are our Spanglish friends going to get out from today's episode specifically?
Well, at the end of today's episode, Spanglish friends, you're going to be able to answer these 3 questions. Number 1. What are the words you need to know to express simple, high-energy emotions, such as I'm happy, I'm fantastic, or I'm excited? Number 2, what are the words you need to know to express simple, lower-energy emotions, such as I'm not so great, I'm tired, or I'm stressed? And finally, what are 2 common feelings that you'd express as a beginner in Spanish where you don't actually use the verb estar, aka these are 2 common traps that you need to be aware of as a beginner.
Oh, super interesting. Let's do it. Let's answer our first question of the day. What are some ways to reply if someone asks you, how are you? ¿Cómo estás? And you want to reply in a high energy way.
Yes, so to start with, the most common reply to ¿Cómo estás? How are you? Is estoy bien, which is I'm good. Now, if you want to say you're really good or you're really wanting to emphasize any of the emotions we're talking about today, you can add the word muy, the word that means very. For example, you can say estoy muy bien. Estoy muy bien, which is I'm very good.
See, you could also spice it up a bit and say things like estoy fantástico or estoy fantástica. Again, remember from our episode 9 on masculine and feminine adjective. If the emotion ends in O, it goes with the flow and changes gender endings. If not, it doesn't need to change to become masculine or feminine. So in my case, I'd say estoy fantástica.
That's right, with that correct gender ending. Now, if you want Spanglish friends something a bit lighter, you could say estoy contento or estoy contenta, which means I'm doing well, I'm okay. Estoy contenta or estoy contento. You could also say estoy alegre, which means I'm happy.
You can also say estoy emocionada or estoy emocionado, which you have probably heard and I using already in our podcast when we are talking about how we are feeling about an episode. We can say estoy muy emocionada, which means I'm very excited. Estoy emocionada.
That's right. So just to recap our high energy responses that we've taught you today to respond to how are you, ¿cómo estás? You could reply with estoy bien, I'm good, estoy fantástico or fantástica, which is I'm fantastic, estoy contento or contenta, I'm doing well, estoy alegre, which is I'm happy, or estoy emocionado or estoy emocionada, which is I'm excited.
Remember, friends, also to be polite and ask in return how the person asking you is going. You can do this simply after your response by saying, ¿Y tú? And you, for example, estoy emocionada. ¿Y tú?
Estoy fantástica. Gracias, Val. Great reminder. It's always nice to be polite.
Exactly. This brings us to answering our second question of the day. So, we have talked about positive, high energy emotions, right? When you're feeling well and everything is going well. But what about, in contrast, some common lower energy emotions that we might wish to express as well?
Yes, and we want to caveat this section with a warning, okay? If you use one of these responses, Spanish speakers are likely going to ask some follow up questions to check in and make sure that you're okay.
We're curious people. So, if you're just wanting to convey a quick message, reply with estoy bien.
Yes. So let's talk about some lower energy emotions. One of them you might want to say is más o menos. Estoy más o menos, which is like I'm feeling so-so. Más o menos.
But if you are really not feeling it that day, not having a great day, you could say no estoy bien, which means I'm not good. No estoy bien. Or if you are just having a sad day and it's something you want to share with someone, you can say estoy triste. I'm sad. Estoy triste.
Mm-hmm. And you can also get more specific with your replies if you want to avoid too many complex follow-up questions as a beginner.
Exactly. For example, if you want to be more specific, you could say things like, I'm tired, estoy cansado, or estoy cansada. Or you could say, I'm stressed, estoy estresado, or estoy estresada. This might provide a bit more context rather than just saying, no estoy bien.
That's right. So let's summarize these lower energy emotions that you might wish to express in Spanish as a beginner. So we've got estoy más o menos, which is I'm feeling so-so, no estoy bien, which is I'm not so good, no estoy bien, estoy triste, which is I'm sad, estoy cansada, which is I'm feeling tired, or estoy estresado or estresada, which is I'm feeling stressed.
Amazing. This brings us to our third and final question of the day. We mentioned earlier that there are some common feelings that you may want to express in basic Spanish which don't use the verb estar. So, what are they? Tell us.
That's right, Spanglish friends. This comes with a big yellow caution sign. Do not fall into these common traps that beginners, including myself when I started to learn Spanish, have made in the past.
And here, the reason why so many English speakers get confused with these words and what verb they use is because they try to translate the sentence word by word into English, which doesn't always work. Okay? Let's give you the most common example. The first is if you want to say, if you are feeling hot or cold, like perhaps it's a really hot day and you're feeling warm, or like it's a freezing day and you're feeling cold.
And in these two situations, when talking about the temperature that you feel, you need to use the verb tener, T-E-N-E-R, tener, instead of estar. Tener as a verb literally translated means to have. You would say, yo tengo calor. Yo tengo calor, which is like I'm feeling hot, or yo tengo frío. Yo tengo frío, which is I'm feeling cold. In Spanish, cold and heat are not treated like emotions or passing states. They're instead treated more like things that your body has. So instead of saying I am cold, in Spanish, you're literally saying I have cold. Yo tengo frío, or I have heat. yo tengo calor.
Exactly. And it's important, amigos, to get this right because if you use estar, it has another meanings, okay? If you say, for example, estoy caliente with estar, means like I'm like aroused, feeling hot. Or estoy frío means like I'm cold to the touch. Like as a Spanish native speaker, I'd understand that your skin is cold, but not that you're feeling it. So don't use either of those. Here it's important to learn by context and not by directly translating English to Spanish, okay?
That's right. We don't want any dire misunderstandings here at all.
The second trap is when you want to say, I'm hungry or I'm thirsty. Probably from your English perspective, again, you want to translate directly and use the verb to be in Spanish, which you learned is estar, right? Again, in Spanish, we don't say, I'm hungry or thirsty. We say that your body literally has hunger or thirst and use the verb tener, to have. We say, yo tengo hambre. I'm hungry. Hambre means hungry. Or yo tengo sed. I am thirsty. Sed means thirst.
That's right. And again, you can't use estar in these scenarios because it would literally be like saying, I am hunger or I am thirst if you used estoy hambre. Like it just doesn't make sense. So use your Spanish spingle, your Spanish tingle, and know that you need to use the verb tener instead. Yo tengo hambre, yo tengo sed.
Fantástico, Emmy. We know now, Spanglish friends, we only remember things if we put what we've learned into practice, right? We are going to have a mini conversation using the emotions we have spoken about today.
Yes, yes, yes. So let's set the scene for this little conversation. Imagine that I've logged online to have my weekly Spanish class via video call with my profe Val.
And here, Spanglish friends, your job is simple. See if you can catch how I am feeling and how am is feeling based on the vocab you've learned today.
And this conversation example is so commonly how we start our Spanish lessons between both of us, asking each other how we are. So this vocab is 100% useful to start knowing and using as a beginner. Are you ready, profe Val?
Sí, amiga. Comencemos.
Hola, profe Val. Buenos días. ¿Cómo estás?
Hola, buenos días. Estoy contenta y un poco cansada. ¿Y tú?
Estoy muy bien. Estoy fantástica. Y yo tengo calor.
Qué diferente. Yo tengo frío y tengo sed.
How did you go, Spanglish friends?
Amigos, do you catch any of the emotions and feelings that we were expressing today?
Let's break it all down. Now, firstly, I said, hola, Val. Buenos días. And I said, ¿Cómo estás? I asked her, how are you?
And I replied, muy buenos días. Muy buenos días. Which means, very good morning, Em. And then I shared my first emotions. The first I used was estoy contenta, which is I'm doing well. Estoy contenta. And I also said, y un poco cansada. You learned today that cansada means tired, cansada. And I wanted to say, I am a little tired. So I added y, which means and, plus un poco, which means a little, like a little bit. Y un poco cansada. So I said, and I'm a little bit tired.
That's right. And I responded with my first emotion, which is estoy fantástica, which we know means I'm fantastic. And y tengo calor. Y tengo calor, which means I'm feeling hot. I was feeling warm. Notice that this was one of the traps that we shared. I didn't say estoy calor, which we know this is wrong. I said tengo calor. I was feeling warm temperature-wise.
Amazing. Then I said, qué diferente. Qué diferente, which means, wow, how different. Qué diferente. And I said two more feelings. I said, yo tengo frío, which we know means I am feeling cold. The opposite of Emmy. That's why I said, qué diferente, wow. And then I added tengo sed, which we know and we learned means I'm thirsty.
Yes, this was our second trap to look out for. Val needed to say tengo sed, I am thirsty, instead of using the verb estar for this specific feeling.
Well done, Spanglish friends. We hope this has helped you put into practice how you can start saying how are you feeling, ask others how they are feeling as well in basic Spanish.
So tell us, Profe Val, if our Spanglish friends have forgotten everything we've talked about, what are the 3 things we want them 100%, 100% to remember?
Absolutely. So the 3 things we want you to remember, Spanglish friends, from today's episode are número uno, how to ask someone how they are and ask questions back, which is ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? And once you have replied back, you can say ¿Y tú? And you? Número dos, with emotions, you can always make them more or less by adding muy, such as estoy muy bien. Like here you are adding more, like I'm very, very good. Or you could say un poco, like a little bit. Estoy un poco cansada or estoy un poco cansado. I'm a bit tired. And last one, número tres, the correct way to say things like I'm feeling hot or I'm feeling cold temperature wise are tengo frío or tengo calor. Remember, I am cold or hot. Or if you are hungry, you can say tengo hambre. Or if you're thirsty, you can say tengo sed.
That's great, Profe Val. This brings us to our reto, our challenge of the day. We want you to head to the comments and tell us, how are you feeling today? Answering the question, ¿Cómo estás? You can reply by using the structure, yo estoy, plus the emotion you are feeling, using the vocab that we've learnt today. For example, yo estoy fantástica. We can't wait to see your replies. And remember, if you get involved, you might be included in an upcoming shout out.
Absolutely. Please tell us quickly before we go, what are we going to be diving into the next episode?
We're going to be diving further into verbs, estar and ser, our favorites. Specifically, we're going to be going through some further conjugations of these verbs, which we hinted at in episode 12. For example, how do we say things like we are, or they are, or you all are something? So we can start to talk about groups of people describing how they are, where they're at, etc.
I love this idea, amazing, and I can't wait to start diving into that.
Well, it's time to go. Yo tengo hambre. I'm feeling hungry, and it's time for me to eat breakfast here in Australia.
The opposite here in Chile, on the other side of the world, with 14 hours different to you, Emmy. Estoy cansada. I'm tired. Estoy muy cansada. It's almost time for me to go to sleep. So, amigos, we hope you have enjoyed and see you next time.
Have a good sleep, Val. Ciao, friends. Hasta la próxima. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to Spanglish Friends. We are both so proud of the time you're investing to level up your Spanish listening and speaking skills.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, follow us and give the show a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Or even better, tell a friend about the show. It's how we can help even more people on their Spanish learning journeys and continue to grow our awesome, supportive community.
Don't forget to check out our socials, including Instagram and TikTok at Spanglish_friends for even more beginner Spanish fun.
Congratulations on taking another step today towards your Spanish learning goals. Ciao, Spanglish amigos. Until next time.
Hasta la próxima, amigos.